We're recording, and I'm going to pass it off to Lisa, who's going to take it on from here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone, for attending this Major to Career panel, which is hosted by the URI Center for Career and Experiential Education. I am Lisa Wyant. I am a professor of psychology and the director of the Interdisciplinary Neuroscience Program. So thank you again for joining us. We have a great panel today, which I'm excited about, that they'll be sharing their experiences with you. So let's just jump in first. And what I'd like is for each panelist to introduce yourself. And if you choose to identify your pronouns, that's fine as well. And explain what your current position's title is. So we'll get into talking about your position as we go through the panel today. But just for now, just begin with your title. So let's start with you, Dr. Albert.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Albert. I'm an assistant professor of biomedical and pharmaceutical sciences at URI.
And then the other
is she, her.
Thank you. And then Victor.
Hey, everybody. My name is Victor. I'm a first-year medical student at Brown and an alumni of the IMP's master program.
Thank you, Victor. And Anya.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anya. I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Miami and also an alum of the URI's undergrad neuroscience program.
Great. I think that's, am I missing any panelists?
Yeah. My name is Jewel.
Hey, oh, there, Jewel. Hi, I couldn't see you. I can only see like 4 faces at the top of my screen. So thanks, Jewel.
Yeah. My name is Jewel. I am currently a research assistant at Harvard Medical, and I am an alumni of URI's molecular neuroscience undergraduate program.
Great. I believe that completes our panel. Okay, so the first question, and what I'll do is I'll pose the first question, and we can just go in the same order that we did with introductions, and you can answer the question. So Dr. Albert, we can begin with you. So tell us about your career journey and what position did you start in? And then how did you end up in the position here at URI?
Okay. Wow. My career journey started really when I was 9 years old. I did a science fair project called How Does the Brain Work? And I made a 3D model of the brain, and I became kind of obsessed with that project. And I won the science fair, which was really exciting. And then the next year, my grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease when I was 10. And from then on, I was always into brain stuff. When I got to high school, I knew I wanted to do something with the brain and something with memory. And I did an undergraduate degree at Brock University in Canada in neuroscience. That's where I'm from. And after that, I actually, for 2 years, I was a research assistant on an epilepsy ward in downtown Toronto. At one of the hospitals there. And when I was there, I decided to go to grad school. And I ended up doing a master's and PhD in cognitive neuropsychology at University of Edinburgh. And then I did a fellowship actually where Victor is now at the Brown Medical School, working in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior in the clinical neuropsychology program. And then I was hired on faculty by Brown for a year, and then I came to URI after that. So it's kind of a winding road, but I'm a lucky person. I've known from a very young age what I was interested in. And now I do research in Alzheimer's disease.
Thank you. Anya, tell us about your career journey. You're muted.
Sorry, muted.
That's okay.
I started at URI with the neuroscience degree, and my journey is a little shorter than Dr. Albers because I am still in my first year as a PhD student. I work in a clinical cancer research lab, actually doing different neurocancers as well as leukemias. And I'd say my journey kind of started in probably in undergrad as I worked in the labs of Dr. Nasser Zawiya and Dr. Margaret Levin, but that's all I've got for my journey so far. Pretty short.
Short but mighty. Okay, Victor.
Sure. So I started college at High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. And in that 1 year, I studied exercise science before transferring to the University of Rhode Island. And as an undergrad, I studied biology, but still didn't really know what I wanted to do with that degree. So I really found myself immersed in a bunch of different extracurricular activities like after school or like tutoring as a peer tutor at the Academic Enhancement Center. I also worked as a medical scribe for Brown Emergency Medicine, and also at the Rhode Island Free Clinic in Providence, which is a free healthcare clinic for uninsured adults. So I really found myself in different extracurriculars that ended up pointing me towards medicine. After graduating with my undergraduate degree, I took a gap year, which is right for some people. Other people want to jump right into grad school. I encourage people to take a gap year. I think it's a great opportunity to either work, travel, do research, just become a more interesting individual and build your application a little bit more. But in that gap year, I founded Sprout and STEM, which is a nonprofit organization based in Providence. I can talk more about that later. And then I ended up returning to URI for graduate school for my master's. And as I was working on my master's at URI, I was in the Camberg lab. I was doing biochemical neuroscience research and applied to medical school from there. And now I'm at Brown.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to let audience members know that you can insert messages in the chat, or you can wait where I will allow at least 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. Okay, so Jewel, tell us about your.
Yeah, so I started my undergrad at URI, and I was originally a bio major and involved in different research labs. I started in the Caret lab, and we researched Lyme disease and ticks, so it was very environmental focused. But from there, I actually was accepted to URI's MARC program, and I got heavily more involved in research. I joined Dr. Schwann's Chen's lab, as well as Dr. Rachel Schwartz lab. So I was really focusing my undergrad career just mostly on research. During one of my anatomy and physiology courses, we had a section on the nervous system. And from there, I became a little bit more interested in neuroscience. And I saw that we just started an undergraduate program at URI, and I thought it was a great opportunity to learn more. So I added that major. And after I graduated, I joined Dr. Chen's lab at Harvard Medical. And here I focus on protein structure. So while I am in my gap year, I'm also prepping and applying for graduate school.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Interesting journeys. So the next question is, could you describe what a day is like in the workplace? So what is your life like on a daily basis? And Dr. Albert, we'll start with you again.
My life is a little chaotic on a daily basis, but I enjoy that. I don't like, going to work every day and doing the same thing over and over. So the way I've set up my career is that I have a clinical research lab at Butler Hospital in Providence. I am there Tuesdays and Fridays, and that's where I see all my research participants and where some of my staff is. I'm part of the memory and aging program there, which is, I've been there for 8 years now, and that's where I did my fellowship. It's a team of 60 people working on clinical trials for development of new biomarkers and therapeutics for Alzheimer's disease. No 2 days there are the same. Every day is different, and it's a real kind of immersive experience in clinical research, clinical trials. And then we also have a neurology clinic where we see Alzheimer's and other dementia patients. So I wear many hats there and do many different things. At URI, I'm focused on, I'm there Mondays and Wednesdays, and I teach in the IMP. I also do, I write grants, I write manuscripts, I mentor undergraduate and graduate students, which I find very satisfying. I currently have 2 undergrads and a master's student in my lab, and I have a PhD student starting in the fall. So I get a lot out of that and I enjoy it. And on Thursdays, I try to work from home and actually get something productive where I have to think critically done, which I shoot for, but doesn't always work because I usually have meetings or something come up and interrupt it. But yeah, I kind of have the clinical piece, the clinical research piece, and the research piece, which is more focused on kind of grant writing, paper writing, and the more academic stuff. I enjoy the time split the way I have. I like doing a little bit of everything. And I would advise anyone who, I guess you can have a career where you don't just do one thing. You can do a lot of different things. So you shouldn't limit yourself.
Great, thank you for that. I wanted to add on something that's not on my list of questions here. What, for you and for everyone, is there anything about your position that you don't like?
Yes. I think any job you ever take, there will be things about it that you don't like. I'm sure, Dr. Wyant, there are things about being director of the IMP that you don't love. For me, the stuff that I really don't like is mostly administratively based. I find it sometimes really challenging to work within the administrative system at URI related to research, related to teaching. And sometimes, because the IMP is interdisciplinary, it's not its own department, and kind of working within that structure and trying to make sure that I'm satisfying the requirements of my department, which is BPS and the IMP. So balancing all that and a lot of the administrative stuff, I would say I could leave behind.
Thank you for your honest response. All right, Anya, what's a typical day for you? And then if you could just add on things that you enjoy about your day and things that perhaps you would like, if you could, you wouldn't mind changing.
I will steal Dr. Alber's word, chaotic to say the least. I am in a very fast-paced lab. We publish a lot, we publish often, we publish in high impact journals, which means that we are constantly on the go trying to get as much data as possible. So I'd say I tend to stagger my experiments in ways where if I have something in the centrifuge for a half hour, I am doing tissue culture. If I have something in the incubator for 45 minutes, I'm off doing a BCA. Like, I stagger my experiments in ways where there's really no downtime. And I'd say that's maybe the one thing that I don't like, is that I don't really get like a moment to sit down at all during the day. I check my watch, I hit like 30,000 steps a day. It's frequently just running around the lab like a chicken with no head, but I do love it. And I think the most important part of what I'm doing right now is trying to balance the lab work and the classes. As a first year, you take a lot of classes in a PhD program, and trying to find that balance between your academic work versus your lab work is really, really difficult. And if I could, that's the other thing I don't like, is I'd say I'd like time to focus on lab and time to focus on classes, but you don't really get that when you're expected to be in lab for what, like 10, 12 hours a day. But I say I don't like the no downtime, but simultaneously I love being here. I love what I do, and I wouldn't change anything about it.
Thank you, Anya. Victor, typical day, things you like and something you aren't so fond of.
Sure. So we're very fortunate at the medical school where we have our calendar made for us by the administration. So all of our classes are listed in a universal Google Calendar. So it keeps things organized for us, which is just an example of one of the many resources that we're provided, which just makes our lives a bit easier. But we start class at 9 every day, Monday through Friday. And we'll have anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 lectures per day. Sometimes there are optional seminars in the afternoon. Otherwise, the afternoon, about 5 and later is made available to us for either research or meetings or clinical electives. And so these days I'm doing research in the Department of Plastic Surgery. We just published a paper in Plastic and the Journal Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery on cranial suture fusion. And I'm also doing some research on local education in Providence. So we just submitted an IRB proposal to Brown. So I would say, just from whatever wisdom I've collected over the last 8 months, I would say dedicate time for yourself, whether that's exercise, whether that's to cook something healthy. You really have to be disciplined in looking after yourself and taking care of your health. And fortunately, I think it's great to be at a school that really prioritizes wellness. So we're fortunate in that sense.
That's great advice. Jewel, typical day, things that you're fond of, things that you could change if you could wave that magic wand that we all wish we had.
Yeah, so as a research assistant, typically I will assist other postdocs, grad students with their projects. So something about kind of what I do is very repetitive, especially in protein structure. The purifications can differ slightly, but ultimately we work with metal affinity and size exclusion. So it can be pretty repetitive, which could be something that could be a negative, but while I'm working, I'm currently also studying for the MCAT and applying to grad school this cycle. So one benefit of the repetitiveness is I know what I'm doing and I can structure my workday accordingly. Also, I was fortunate enough to join a lab that is extremely understanding and my hours are not set. I have things I have to get done. And if I am done with those, I can go along with my day with studying or working on my application, and people are really understanding. So if you're looking into becoming a research assistant during gap years or for your career, I think that's also something to look into, is flexibility in the lab that you join.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So most of the participants, I was just looking at who's here, we have a nice turnout, are students in the undergraduate program. So I'm wondering if each of you could describe if there are specific skills, work experiences, or academic coursework that you think the undergraduates could become involved in that would make them more competitive for neuroscience positions, the position that each of you are involved in, or in Victor's case in medical school. And we'll go around and have you answer that. And then audience members, again, you can put questions into the chat, or you can wait until the end when we'll have a time for Q&A. So Dr. Albert, we'll start with you.
In terms of having kind of an academic position, you would want to, as an undergraduate, try to get some sort of research experience. I know that in the undergraduate IMP program, there's the 410 course, which is a research experiential learning research course. So that would be something you would do. But even if you can volunteer in a lab, that's great experience for kind of laying a foundation for your research career. It's okay if you don't know what you're interested in, you just want to try things out. That's what your undergraduate degree is for. So, you know, if you volunteer in a lab one year and you don't enjoy, you can switch to a different lab, you can try different things to see what you like, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. There are some research methods courses that you can take to kind of beef up your kind of background. And then the other thing is trying to, as you get to the later stages of your undergraduate degree, if you can participate in any type of poster presentation or submit an abstract to a conference in an area that you're interested in with the guidance of a professor, I think that's really what makes someone competitive moving forward into like a graduate school position, into a research graduate degree. For a clinical graduate degree, you want to, if you're doing kind of clinical neuropsychology, you want to get experience with patient contact. You want to work towards volunteering in settings where there are people in the population that you're interested in. So I'm interested in working with older adults. You would volunteer on a memory unit, a nursing home, something like that, but you want to get that kind of clinical contact with the patient groups. And I would advise you as an undergraduate, I know sometimes it's a little scary when you're talking to professors, but I never, turned away an undergraduate who approached me and is interested in research. I sometimes don't have a spot for them that semester, but then we move to the next semester or something like that. It's okay to approach people and ask for volunteer experience, and, don't be afraid.
Thank you. Thank you. Anya.
I'll go a little bit more technical with the skills and things I think would be important to be a competitive applicant. The first thing that I can really emphasize is I think our field, especially in a PhD program, is moving very heavily in the direction of bioinformatics. If you can get a working knowledge of Python, of R, of any of these languages and softwares and programs before you start applying to graduate school, I think that is a really, really great way to set yourself apart from other applicants, and also have that working knowledge for when you get to graduate school and are analyzing data in ways that other people cannot. This semester I took classes in both Python and R, and it's really something I wish I had learned earlier. So there's online courses, I'm not too sure if there's anything at URI, I never got that opportunity, but if you can set yourself apart by learning any sort of coding language, that is a really important tool, I think. The other thing is to be able to be proficient, not just in a couple of techniques that you can do, but to really get an expanse of different techniques in the lab, whether it's things like a Western blot or tissue culture, or really any of those, an IC50. If you can do multiple of those that you can list on your CV, I think that's really important as well, because going back to my interview experiences, something that happened at the interviews is they picked out skills that I had listed on my CV and asked in which scenarios of experiments I would do those things, or they asked a lot of times questions that I got at interviews were about, if you have X set of data, tell us how you would analyze this, or if you have this problem, tell us what experiments and what techniques you would use to get this set of data. So really knowing which techniques will get you what, I think is super important for that part of the application, which is, I guess, focused more towards like the older undergraduates, but for younger one, for freshmen, for sophomores, just getting into a lab is so important. It's not too early to start as a freshman or a sophomore. A lot of people say, oh, I'll wait until I'm more settled in. I'm a junior, I'm a senior. It's not too early. In fact, it's encouraged that you start now. I think getting 4 years in a lab will make you an extremely competitive applicant, and also will make you more prepared to take on the challenges of graduate school. I got into a lab my junior year, and I wish I had had more time. I wish I had more experience. I'll speak to what Victor said as well about a gap year. That can be a really, really beneficial thing if you feel like you don't have enough experience in a lab. But yeah, I think especially bioinformatics and a wide array of techniques are your best bet for being a competitive applicant.
Thanks, Anya. Victor, what are your thoughts?
Sorry if there's any background noise. There's construction going on outside, but just to echo Anya, I would say data science is a big differentiator. I think with every PI that I've approached and sent my resume to, one of the first questions they ask is, are you familiar with statistical analysis? And so I would say learning R, learning SAS, knowing those languages, it's really important. I think I'll just speak broadly before I dive into skills that are specific to preparing for medical school. I would say there's an expectation in neuroscience that comes with knowing a little bit about everything. And I think that's captured by the term interdisciplinary in your degree. There's an expectation that you should be familiar with physics, right? Like the capacitance and conductivity of an action potential. You should be familiar with biochemistry, the biochemistry of a synapse, with public health, prevalence of neurodegenerative diseases. So the reason a neuroscience degree just sounds so profound is because, not because it's a fancy word and it's, your uncle who studied business is, totally unfamiliar about the brain and nervous system. It's really because there's a lot of weight that comes with that degree and the expectation that you know a lot about a number of different things. So I would say just make sure you uphold that expectation, know your subject matter, and being able to speak fluently in your language of neuroscience is really important. I think with medicine, what admissions committees want to see is authenticity. And so if they ask you about your neuroscience degree and you can't discuss it with them at a professional level, that's going to be a red flag. Otherwise, things you can do to build a medical school application. I taught an MCAT prep course, and I've spoken with dozens of medical school applicants in the past. I tell them different ways that they can build a unique application. One is by applying for Fulbright scholarships and fellowships. So if you're not familiar with what Fulbright is, or Rhodes Scholar, Gates Scholar, that is the opportunity to teach overseas for a year, learn another language, immerse yourself in another country, and teach elementary level English to students in that country. I think going to graduate school for a year, or just doing research at like Rhode Island Hospital or the Miriam Hospital, doing clinical or translational research is a great way to create a more robust application. And you can also teach in local schools. I think a lot of school districts now, they're struggling so badly that they're accepting anyone with a bachelor's degree. If you can teach science or math, they're willing to take you. So there's a bunch of different things you can do extracurricularly to really differentiate yourself. In terms of clinical experiences, I would suggest, especially if you're in Rhode Island, look into Clinica Esperanza or the Rhode Island Free Clinic. These are healthcare clinics where you can work with underserved, uninsured individuals and provide medical services. I would try to shadow for sure. Make sure you actually like medicine, right? You don't want to apply to medical school and not even know if you really like it. I could go on, but I would say, make sure you're doing things that you're passionate about, and make sure you know your field of study.
Thank you, Victor. Jewel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in research, and I think that really helped me obviously get a research assistant position. Um, when I was in undergrad, I was in a lab for a long time, and because of that, I was able to develop my own independent project. And that I feel was like most important when I was applying to positions. During our interviews, I would have to give a presentation on my research, and I would be asked questions back about, specific techniques or reasonings in my stats. So being able to like fully understand what I was doing and share it with others who didn't work in the field of research that I did during my undergrad was really important. So I would say when, if you decide to join a research lab, to really like immerse yourself in it. At first, you'll probably be working with a grad student or postdoc to learn the skills of how your lab works. But a really good goal to have would be to develop your own project. And then from there, you can present at, our local URI symposiums or even national ones.
Great, thank you. And several of you have mentioned the importance of poster presentations. And so those who are in the audience, I just wanted to remind you that each year, so we had our first annual neuroscience symposium here at URI last year, and we'll be offering that again this year. So if you're working in a lab, that's an excellent opportunity for you to work with your supervisor from the lab and put together a poster presentation and apply to present at that symposium. Or as Jewel just said, you can apply for national conferences, poster presentations as well, but that's really important. The other thing I'd like to chime in is it's crucial that you develop relationships with professors that can write strong letters of recommendation for you. So if it's a lab that you're working in or a professor that you've taken hopefully more than one course from, so they can speak to more than just your performance in a class, but they have an understanding of you as a person and your experiences and your research skills and whether you're a responsible, dependable person. So that's really important. So that's something that you want to start thinking about early. It's interesting that nearly everyone's recommended that you get involved in research. Maybe you're as a first year. I tend to discourage that because students often have a difficult time transitioning. So the chemistry they took in high school is not the chemistry they take in college. Same as biology. And so it can be sort of a shock to the system. However, there are exceptions. And I would say that students who are here were the exceptions. And I've had a student who's worked in my labs since the first year, and now they have several publications, and that's going to make that person very attractive to programs or employment in the future. So if you're ready to work hard and you're disciplined and you can balance a lot of different responsibilities, then yes, hit the ground running if you can. So the next question for each of you is: there something that you wish you knew before you graduated college? And Dr. Albert, we'll start with you again.
Okay. There's a lot of things I wish I knew before I graduated college. Probably the thing that I would say I wish the most that I knew was to just not put so much pressure on myself. I think Victor made a really good point that neuroscience is a very multidisciplinary degree. And everyone puts a lot of pressure on themselves when they're in college to decide exactly what they want to do. And you don't have to decide exactly what you want to do in college. You can take a gap year. I took 2 gap years. I did a research assistant job, but then just kind of thought about, what I wanted my life to look like. And I wish in college the whole time I wouldn't have put so much pressure on myself and I would have stopped to enjoy it more, because it does go by really fast and it's an amazing time in your life. And I know I sound really old with what I'm saying, but I think I've seen actually through teaching a lot of you that, you know, you're all so driven, which is great. And it's going to take you really far in life. But remember to kind of enjoy things too, because it will go by really fast and you will get old and wish you were young again. So
That's interesting. I would say the same thing. I wish I would have had more fun in college. Okay, Anya.
I think something I wish I knew is how much all of what I was learning was going to be important for me to know in the future. There were a lot of classes that I came into with the attitude of, let me learn this for the test and then I'm never going to think about it again. And that was absolutely the wrong thing to do. I luckily took pretty good notes because I have been going back to my CMB 333 class and my Neuro 320 class and flipping through those notes because I learned it for the test and then I forgot it. And I really wish that I had known how much every single thing that I was learning in those classes was going to come back and be important in my grad school classes and my grad school research. Yeah, basically, I to sum it up, I think focus on what you're doing and don't take it too lightly either. Kind of the opposite of what Dr. Albert is saying, but I think I wish I had put more pressure on myself to commit that to more of a long-term memory rather than approach it with the attitude of I just need to pass this class and then I can go have fun.
That's interesting, Anya. When we follow up with you to be on this panel in 15 years, we want to see if you say the same thing, but I think it's good advice. All right, Victor.
I'm going to flip the question a little bit, but I would say not something that I wish I knew, but something I kind of gambled on, and I'm happy it turned out to be right, in being patient and trusting the process, knowing that I needed a gap year, knowing that I needed to get a master's degree, and just really trusting the process and understanding that medicine, academia, these are lifelong professions. You are constantly learning. To try to rush your application because you want to start medical school 2 years earlier or a year earlier, it's not in your best interest. So if you want to put yourself in the best position to either get accepted or to, you know, maybe go to an even more competitive school, understand that that's going to come with sacrifices, and sometimes that sacrifice is time. So looking back on it, I have zero regrets. I don't feel like I was impeded in any way by having to get an additional degree. I'm very thankful for my time at URI and my master's program and everyone I met and everything I learned. And it worked out. And it's something I try to preach, and I've already mentioned it, you know, take a gap year, but yeah, I would say trust the process and be patient.
Okay, thank you, Jewel.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna have to mostly agree with Dr. Alver that I feel like during my undergrad years, I took on way too much and I ended up getting very burnt out by my last year. So I think something really important that I wish I did was really just focus on a couple things that were the most important to me and put my energy into that instead of spreading out too much. Because of that, you know, I didn't want to apply so early. I was so burnt out. I wanted some time to just kind of relax and just work and focus on that for a little bit and take a year or two off from going back to school. So yeah, I think the number one thing is to really just focus on things that are most important to you, and put your energy into that instead of doing too much at once.
Thank you. So this next question is for Jewel and Anya. Was there a course at URI in the undergraduate program that you found most valuable? And if so, what was it?
There were two, I would say. The first, I'm forgetting the name and the course number, but it was the one taught by Dr. Fellini. Maybe you can help me out, Dr. Wyatt.
Cell and molecular.
That's
Yep.
the one. Cell and molecular neuroscience. Dr. Fellini taught that class, and we had quite a few discussion-based and paper reading-based assignments that I thought were really beneficial for how to learn how to interpret data, how to interpret it in the context of this is the project and this is and these are the small details. How do I connect them? I really enjoyed that class. If you get the opportunity to take it with Dr. Fellini, she's amazing. And I think that was my all-time favorite class. The second I would say was CMB 333, which was immunology and serology. That is for the molecular neuroscience people. That is one of your classes that you can take for 3 credits under the section that you need an additional 5 credits for your electives. I highly recommend that course. It's taught by Dr. Rothman, I believe. I really, really enjoyed that class. And as someone who now works in a clinical cancer lab, it was absolutely just the most valuable course I could have taken without knowing it. And again, that goes back to my point of at the time that I was in the class, I didn't place enough emphasis on, I really need to actually understand this material and be proficient in it. But now I'm so grateful to have those study guides that Dr. Rothman put together for us, because they are really, really helping me out with my research now and my classes.
Thank you. Jewel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so actually one of the classes that I really enjoyed was Bio 457 or something. It's taught by Dr. Schwartz. Like Anya mentioned earlier, the importance of computational skills. And in that class, we learned Python, R, and how to use Git. And I was actually able to use my own data set from my lab and analyze it during that class. So it allowed for like a real application to what we were learning too, which was very helpful. For the neuroscience classes, I don't remember what it was called, but it was the lab where we learned research skills.
Yeah, that was the research methodology NEU 262, where you use the cryostats.
Yeah. So yeah, we learned a lot of skills in there that I use in my labs all the time. So I think that's really important. If you're interested in research, you learn the basics and a lot of them.
Okay. Before I ask another question, I noticed the time, it's 1:42, and I promised we would leave time for a Q&A. So is there anyone that would like to unmute and ask a question of any of the panelists? Just jump in. Or if you're uncomfortable unmuting, you can put it in the chat.
I think I have one.
Okay, Patrick.
Is there anything that you learned that you have discovered was not useful?
I'll answer that first. In my own research, there's nothing that stands out as, oh, this was a huge waste of time, because I pull from everything. Like, I know people want to hear answers like calculus or organic chemistry, but truly I do pull from all of those classes in my work. And so sadly, no, I wouldn't say there's anything you can sweep off to the side as, no, I don't have to do this.
Jewel or Victor, do you have any thoughts about that? It's okay to say yes.
I'm trying to think. I love, I mean, any course is an opportunity to learn. I think it shapes you, whether you're conscious of it or not. I'll say this, like in the first week or so of school, we went over like a semester's worth of gen chemistry in like 3 days. So, keeping that in mind, everything reappears at some point. So, take every opportunity you can to learn something and retain it.
I think it also depends on what you do. I mean, if you specialize in one area, whatever that area may be, there may be some skills you took in your undergraduate degree, some more general classes that you may not apply anymore. Do I use physics in my day-to-day life? I do not. So I think it depends on your career choice, and how specialized that might be.
Do we have another audience member that would like to jump in and ask a question? Okay, so then this is a general question for the panelists. Not everyone in neuroscience wants to go to medical school or a PhD program or to become an academic. So for panelist members, I'm sure you have friends who graduated with a degree in neuroscience, but didn't take the same path that you have. What paths might they have taken?
I can go first. I have some friends who, did neuroscience degrees in undergraduate, and some of them went on to work in the pharmaceutical industry. Some of them went on to do something completely unrelated to neuroscience. I know one person from my graduating class is like a yoga instructor, one is like a life coach. So those, you might not end up doing something in neuroscience. That's okay. I would say the biggest one I know that's like a career in neuroscience is the pharmaceutical industry. You can be a bench scientist there, but there are also other positions that are more clinically related. You can be something called a medical science liaison, where you're looking for scientific opportunities and collaborations for the pharmaceutical company. So you're doing more kind of networking and clinical science. And then I have people I know from graduate school who went on to become clinical neuropsychologists. I know people who went on to become psychometrists, so they administer kind of cognitive evaluations, things like that. There's a lot of different areas in the clinical space you could go on to after a neuroscience degree. You could go to PA school, you could go to nursing school, you could do any kind of healthcare profession afterwards. So yeah, there's a lot of different areas, not necessarily MD, in the healthcare world where neuroscience can help. Also, masters of social work. I know a couple people who went on and did that and now work with people who have had traumatic brain injuries, things like that.
Great, that's a great response. Jewel, Anya, or Victor, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Thought that was really comprehensive.
Anyone from the audience have a question? Okay, then our last question will go around each person. What are your parting words of advice to undergraduate students who are neuroscience majors? What do you want to leave them with? We can start with Victor.
Sure. I would say that neuroscience is a discipline that remains at the forefront of science, and it's such an exciting opportunity to be able to study the brain and further understand consciousness and how we think and how we speak and retain memories. There's so many different subtopics in neuroscience that you can really dive into and become lost in. So take advantage of what you're studying and fall in love with it. And I believe I would say this too. Someone said it earlier. It's okay to have multiple passions and things too. You can love neuroscience and something else. I think it was Dr. Albert who said that. So as much as you may love neuroscience, it's also okay to love music or chess. So it's good to be multi-talented, and that's all I have to say there.
Thank you. Thanks, Victor. Jewel, what are your thoughts? Takeaway message for the students?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, academics and your more academic focused extracurriculars are important. But again, similar to what Victor said, like it's important to kind of like find yourself during your undergrad years and figure out what you really enjoy doing. Joining like the ping pong club at URI and really try not to burn yourself out during these 4 years, and spend the time kind of figuring out yourself and what you want to do is also very important.
Great. Anya.
I'd say keep an open mind to new things. I came into my PhD program dead set on doing a neuroscience degree, and now I work in, as I mentioned, a clinical cancer lab. And I still take all of the skills that I learned from my neuroscience degree and I apply them here. And it's all useful information. There's nothing I feel like you can't do after a neuroscience degree because it translates to everything. So I think you're in a really, really good position with the major that you've chosen because it really will take you to any discipline, as Victor mentioned. So just keep an open mind and don't be afraid to branch out a little bit while still kind of clinging to your neuro roots. It's a really great major and a really great community to be a part of.
Thanks, Anya. Dr. Albert, what are your parting words of wisdom?
Ask questions, stay curious. I think the best thing for anyone who is kind of at college in the pursuit of knowledge is to be curious and to ask questions and to, take advantage of the opportunities that you have to learn. There's a lot of things available to you, so don't be afraid to reach out and grab them.
And I would like to add that it's important to give back to others, give back to the community, as all of our panelists have today. So I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy days, sharing your experiences. And I'd like to thank the audience for attending. This is recorded, and the URI Center for Career and Experiential Education will make it available to you and to other students who would like to watch. Thank you, everyone.
I'll drop my, Dr. Wyman, I'll drop my email in the chat in case anyone has any questions.
Great, that's generous of you.
Reach out to me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.